Okay, so welcome to our third study group. My name is Lulu and I will be guiding the discussion. My classmates Patty, Sebas, and Dianita are going to share their insights about three articles in which the authors developed the research around three main concepts: corpora, corpus linguistics, and second language education. Having said that, the articles are the following: Corpus Literacy Instruction in the Language Teacher Education, Investigating Arab EFL Student Teachers' Immediate Beliefs and Long-Term Practices by Abdel Latif, 2020. Learning and Teaching with Corpora, Reflections by Student Teachers, Breyer, 2009, and Expanding Academic Vocabulary with an Interactive Online Database, Horst et al., 2005. The dynamics are the following. I will ask a set of questions about the most relevant aspects that can be found across the articles. Since there is a limited time to conduct the discussion, between 2 and 3 minutes per question will be given to 2 respondents. So we are going to start with a general question, and we are going to have the opinion of all the participants. So what are your general thoughts about the readings? I would like to ask Janita first to start with her thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Lulu. In my opinion, I think that the three of the articles points out the importance of the incorporation of corpus inside the classroom, but also how it is necessary that the teachers have a training before the incorporation of this element, because it is mentioned that in the past it was incorporated the corpora inside the classroom. However, the implementation and the use of this type of elements is not well accomplished. So I like this, the fact that remark that the teachers need to be trained, but also that they need to be trained to elaborate the material, to implement the material, and also which are the advantages of incorporating this inside the classroom.
Thank you. Patty?
Yes, when looking at the three articles in general, what really caught my attention was how the emphasis they add to how research on corpora is numerous, but that the practicality, either into the educational setting or other contexts like real life, is very limited. And most of the time we have this comment like, oh, there's no research. But now that we do have research, why is it not being incorporated? And the three articles developed on why. Like, it's not as easy as it sounds. It's not as just as simply saying, oh yes, I'm going to incorporate it, because it requires numerous factors to be possible for its implementation. And most of all, it sheds light on how important it is for taking research into practice, because at the end, that's what we're aiming for. What are we doing research if it cannot be actually taken into practice? So the three articles really draw attention towards this aspect.
Thank you. And finally, Sebas?
Okay, well, as Patty mentioned, in these three readings, in these articles, we are discussing the use about corporea and the use of technology. However, as Patty mentioned, these three examples are given in a way that we can analyze, criticize how is the process of giving a device like this, because we have the focus in one reading that is based on teachers and it's focused on the way he approaches the use of corporea. However, in the second reading, we have a discussion about that we cannot only base on the teacher, we need to use the assistance of institution of technological devices, on literacy, on the use of ICTs. And in the third one, we have like an adaptation of a corporea that is a work. Our center are the center of the use of these approaches. So if we start discussing these aspects, we can realize like we cannot just use a technique or a device. Just to teach, we need to research, and with theoretical fundamentals, we need to support the use. And this is the example given by the 3 articles.
Thank you, Sebas. So now, having said that, I would like you to share your thoughts about what is the central issue that the 3 articles share. And to begin with, I would like to give the word to Patty.
Yes, from the 3 articles, the central theme is the pedagogical implications of corporal linguistics and how it can be actually taken into the real language classroom environment. And most of all, the challenges that if one aims to implement it, the challenges we may face. Because it's not just simply stating, oh yes, I'm going to use it, and yes, there are numerous advantages, but how are we going to address that implementation? So that would be it, the pedagogical implications, which at the end are very useful, however, complicated and challenging for all the stakeholders involved.
Thank you, Patty. So, Dianita, what do you think about Patty's argument?
I was saying that I agree in Patty's comments because it is important to know the objective of the main goal in order to implement the corpus inside the classroom, because it is not just to apply the corpus in order to be more sophisticated or to be to have new elements inside the classroom, but also what are the needs of the students. So I think that one important aspect, the needs of the students, the needs also, I think, that of the school, and also how we can apply the corpus with the objective of the classroom or of the topic, right? So I think that we need to take into consideration several aspects. And as a final comment of this, I think that a corpus is something new for the teachers, or probably not new, but is something that is not common inside the classroom. Applied corpus to teach a specific topic. So that's
Okay.
it.
Thank you very much, Dianita. So I would like to ask Sebas, what do you consider are the theoretical or empirical foundations in the studies?
Okay, well, talking about these aspects in the readings, I consider that the 3 of them are like sequential and they complement each other. Since we start with a description of language teacher education and the use of call as well. And we have another topic, well, another theme, which is data-driven learning.
Mm-hmm.
And these aspects are relevant because those are like the foundations. And as the articles mentioned, we have several studies that have explored these areas. However, every study has been researched in specific contexts, such as in the case of Germany, Taiwan, and when they try to apply them to the context, we have like a support about what has been done in order to improve, modify, or adapt new data techniques or implementation of activities in order to have, like as Patty mentioned and Diana said, the use of the corporea in real language context. However, these are aspects which can be like be detrimental effects, since the contextualization may affect like the results or even the generalization in further research.
Thank you, Sebas. Patty, what do you agree with Sebas' argument?
Your mic?
Sorry. Yes, I agree with Sebas. When I was reading, I don't know if it was on purpose, but the presentation of the articles was really important because first is like the teacher as a focus or the main agent. the determinant agent of incorporating corpora either in the language classroom or not. Then we have like, okay, let's see how it works. Let's give them a training and see how they manage or they can develop activities related to this and practice, let's say, previous practice. And then at the end, it's like, hey, and it was weird because it was in 2005. And it was like, hey, there's a way we can implement it, and it's not teacher-oriented only. It's not the teacher who has to carry all the weight of its implementation. You can introduce and you can ask students and make them part of the process, and not just look at them as a target, but as activations of corpora into the language classroom. And in terms of the empirical and theoretical foundations, I think that the 3 articles were very accurate on addressing that, because they've provided previous studies, and most of all, and what's the most important, is that they addressed what previous studies were making call. And Horst et al. It was a study that began with a quote in which a previous author said, this is what we need to be done in terms of corpora, and they do it. So this was quite amazing, because they did go back to see what has been done, and they address a call of a previous researcher. And this was done throughout the 3 of them. So this really speaks well of how fundamented and documented their studies were, and therefore the reliability and procedures they had were accurate.
Thank you, Patty.
Yeah, sure. Well, regarding methodology, it was very interesting if we perceive this reading as a whole. Why? Here we have an example about longitudinal studies, we have case study, and we have experimental. So in this sense, we can analyze them from a qualitative perspective, which is very important in this kind of research, because we are going to implement a technique. However, even we are experts in the use of technology, we need to consider what are our context, our participants, and the way we're going to go through this. And in this sense, we have, as Patty mentioned before, we have teacher's perspective in the past, in 2005, then we have a student center in 2009, and in 2020, we have an example of all the aspects that we need to consider in order to implement the use of corpora and technology in the classrooms. However, it's missing like this rigorous aspect from quantitative in order to have better results and in order to have like feasible arguments, because as you may know, remember, research is not only based on perspective and thoughts, we also need to have like these numbers in order to provide feasibility to the tools we may use in teaching.
Thank you, Sebas. And somehow you have introduced the next topic, which is the strengths and weaknesses of the articles. So, Dianita, would you like to start with this topic? Your microphone, I think.
Yes, Lulu. Sorry. Well, I think that the strengths of these articles is that they provide a lot of previous studies, and also they identify the gap. So I think that the 3 studies are making a lot of contribution, mainly in their own context. So I consider that, for example, in the first article, that they carry out a longitudinal study. It is important to see how this training was useful for the teaching practices, because I remember that these were that the authors revised or asked to the participants 2 years later. So I consider that this is important to see if the training is useful in long term, but also I consider that in the way that they developed this in the final article, that is the vocabulary, how to implement it, this, or how to design a corpus for a specific purpose, I think that is very important. Probably some of the disadvantages that I will mention is that I think that it is important, the training, but also I consider that it is required more support for the results, because some of them are carrying out new techniques or new, how do you say, new approaches. So I think that the results are not generalized. They need to find for another similar studies.
Thank you, Danita. And Patty, how can you contribute to this discussion?
Yes, contrary to previous articles that we have discussed, I think that we can draw a little bit more on the strengths. And I think that the strengths were developed because the researchers in each of the studies addressed what previous research was missing. Therefore, they identified this gap, and then they said, okay, we need longitudinal studies, so let's do that. We need to know how much time does it need for teachers to really acquire this corpus literacy. And then, okay, let's say there's a call for implementing and making vocabulary activities go beyond just mere definition and word, and go perhaps for rehearsal, practice, and more in-depth understanding. So I think that what makes it to be more strong than weak in that sense. But for example, the first one, I think that in the first article, they mentioned that everything was positive. And then you see the table and the numbers and you're like, well, it's not that positive, because the numbers were very, they were not very high. And you're like, well, yes, they were positive, but you should be more accurate on the description. And then we have, for example, how much time? Was it the time that they offered, the 11 weeks, was it sufficient to develop teacher literacy in this regard? And there was this word that really caught my attention, enthusiasm, and how this enthusiasm of incorporating sometimes leads to a lack of proficiency to do so. So to conclude, I would say that the three of them really had strong or really show strengths, but perhaps they were a little bit enthusiastic about it, and they did not show the other side of what we were expecting to see also.
Yes, thank you, Patty. Very interesting opinion. Sebas, I would like you to comment on the following question. So, how does the findings from one study complement the findings from the other studies?
Okay, talking about the findings, it's pretty interesting. Well, these three articles. Why? Because here we have different perceptions taken into account. And as data findings, I can say if we analyze the three articles as a one, we have to, well, the main issue that I consider is academic versus easiness. Even though corporea, it's a pretty literate, it's a very academic source that we can employ for teaching English, we have to face some problems such as free apps. We need training to use it. We need to contextualize sometimes our students to use it. And as the two articles, let me remember the name. I think it was Abdel and Horst. They had the same findings about the use of dictionary as one of the main sources. So here we have this problem, or well, no problem, maybe an issue. What about use corporate to have examples? But what about the other and easy sources such as the dictionary, Urban Dictionary, WordNet? We have several web pages, and even they have been transformed into apps. So we can discuss that part because it's easier and it shows you and give it maybe not so detailed and specific examples, but we have something similar. Another thing that it's regarding the use of findings, I will say that maybe something to consider is the way that we cannot replicate these studies. since all of them have been applied in different contexts and in different levels, as in the case of the 2020 study, like they were like teachers from high school, secondary schools, and the others who were teaching in for BA, I think. So they may, as they said, we cannot use corporea for beginner learners since they are not able to start working with them. But the results may be appropriate for students with a higher linguistic level.
Thank you, Sebas. So, Dianita, how would you complement Sebas' comment?
Well, I consider that Sebas mentioned something really important. That is that the studies cannot be generalized, but I think that they are like they are open the doors instead that other researchers can not replicate, but probably adapt this new research and approach in order to see what happened with their own context. And also that something that I really liked in the findings was that I will read it, that corpus linguistic part thought to be the student teacher made them aware of the importance and benefits of corpora. So I think that yes, the three articles mention the importance of do it, to implement it at a corpora inside the classroom, the importance of training the students, and also that we need to see the general benefits of this implementation.
Okay, thank you very much, Dianita. And finally, we are almost reaching the end of this discussion. So, Patty, is there any type of contribution to second language education, either pedagogical or in second language acquisition? Sorry.
Yes, I consider that, yes, there is contribution. For example, it was quite interesting to note that in the 2020 article, it was mentioned that, for example, corpora could be integrated in vocabulary, call, or reading courses. And then in Horst, this was evidenced. Perhaps it cannot be used with beginner learners, but it would definitely prove beneficial for those students who perhaps are either advanced learners or who are enrolled in more specific courses rather than ELT. Because yes, we need, when it comes to corpora, it sounds very interesting how real language or authentic language is incorporated, but there are other elements that had to occur previous to this exposure to naturality or naturality of speech. So the contribution, I would say that is, yes, there are environments that can prove beneficial in terms of the integration of corpora, but there are specific in that there are other requirements that have to be fulfilled prior to incorporating it. Because it's not just, hey, this is the corpora, let's create this word bank and let's all include in it. But no, there are previous steps that have to be accomplished prior to its implementation. And in general, the three of them provide or shed light on the agents that are teachers, different stakeholders, access to technology, literacy from the teachers and from the students if we want to incorporate them as active learners. And most of all, how everything has to be assessed, because and also the extent to which it is learner-centered and teacher-controlled, because those go to different sides or different they go to different extremes. So how much control do we need to have it, and how much can we offer the students to be part of it?
Thank you, Patty. So, Sebas, would you like to ask something?
Yes. Well, regarding the pedagogical implications and contributions from the three studies, I will sum up. Like, first of all, we have keystones, and as Patty mentioned, we have like already established a path to shed light on for the research, and we have proposals to explore the incorporation of this kind of stories in language teaching. And very important that I really like is about what Zuckman from 1997 mentioned. I will say like old is cool because what she establishes at the beginning, also it is quite old. In that article, it mentioned like it's feasible and it's still like valid nowadays.
Okay, thank you very much, Sebas. So to conclude, we can say that for decades, the development and increase of lexis in language education has led research to find suitable strategies for both teachers and learners. But the research presented in these articles is not the exception, and considering the time of publication, the concerns about how to provide authentic vocabulary to learners continues to be a topic of exploration. So in this vein, the authors analyze the implementation of corpora in language teaching and learning as means to improve second language acquisition. So the results show that on the one hand, the main obstacles in applying corpora are the unawareness about the benefits of implementing corpus linguistics as a resource, time constraints, and the issue behind using authentic language or textbook language. And on the other hand, the authors provide supported in learner-centered approach or reflected learning experiences that reinforce the argument that corpus not only enhances vocabulary, but it also promotes autonomy, engage cognition, and as a teachers, we are able to see how language is actually used. So maybe further research is needed to provide teachers and students with strategies to take advantage of corpora and integrate it in the teaching learning process. So we have 1 minute. Would you like to add anything? Or should we say goodbye?
I would like to add something. I don't know if this is the adjective to describe corpora in terms of learning education environment, but I think I consider it as an elite aspect, and maybe it's not feasible or access, or we cannot all have access to it. And maybe regardless of how much awareness we can develop, it comprises more than just knowing about it. It goes beyond just saying, oh, there's the list and the most used verbs and this is where they are used, but we need to have more tools. It is an elite tool that not all teachers have access to, but that we, as the 3 articles show, we can benefit from it, but at what stage? Like, we need to determine when, how, and why.
Thank you very much, Patty. Thank you, my classmates, for this rich discussion. Hope you like it. And thank you for being here.
You're welcome, Lulu. Thank you.
Thank you, Lula. Bye.